Chairperson of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Health, Dr. Newzroom, has moved to assure South Africans that Minister Zweli Mkhize is doing his job. This comes after the minister decided not to appear before the committee on Friday to answer to the raging digital vibes tender saga. Mkhize cited legal advice as his reason not to appear before the committee. Dlomo says the committee will seek its own legal advice over Mkhize's no-show.
My discussion with the minister yesterday and what I tabled as his apology in the meeting as a legal opinion given to him is what I tabled, and the members accepted that. That is why we continued the meeting with the DG. So I have then been tasked by the portfolio committee to then check with our legal system in Parliament, and I can tell you I could not adjourn the meeting, go and check, come back. We will be checking with the legal opinion of Parliament in regards to that matter. And so that is how we also resolved it in the committee.
However, Dlomo has assured South Africans that the Digital Vibes contract saga has not derailed Mkhize from his work. He says the minister continues to support provinces in the rollout of COVID-19 vaccines.
Still continuously supporting provinces that must actually roll out the vaccine. That's the main thing. That I'm happy that he's not lost focus in doing that. Well, that's the main pressure. We discussed it briefly on that, and I was even asking him, Minister Mkhize, we commend the rollout of Pfizer, but I still want an update from you with regards to Johnson & Johnson, because there's a very user-friendly vaccine for most rural areas. So he was promising me that there's work that is so advanced in terms of getting that and rolled out also to supplement what is happening already on the ground with Pfizer, which has a limitation of being mainly in the cities and metros because of its the way it is configured and its cold storage that are very strong.
Staying with that story, communications expert Chris Vick has added his voice to calls for Mkhize to step down over the digital vibe saga. Vick says while investigations are underway, the revelations warrant the minister to step aside. Digital Vibes, a company belonging to Mkhize's former personal assistant and other close friends, was irregularly awarded a 150 million rand tender by the health department.
This gets worse and worse. I mean, the revelations about a bakkie for the minister's son, the revelations about paying for alterations to his home. And I think at some point, both the president and the minister have to think about what people in my business call the optics. And the optics is basically, so how does it look? And it doesn't look good. I mean, this sort of drip feeding the information doesn't look good for the minister or for a president who's very committed, or so he says, to cracking down on corruption. It doesn't look good when the minister doesn't pitch up in Parliament to answer questions hiding behind a legal investigation. It doesn't look good that it's not being managed. And sadly, yet again, it's the people of South Africa who are suffering. Government's eye is being distracted from the importance of the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine and the pandemic, and it's having to deal with this issue. And I think that is the biggest concern, that right now we need all hands on deck, all minds focused on what the key challenges are, and we don't need this kind of distraction. And the best way to deal with the distraction is for him to step out of the public light.
To discuss more of this matter, we are joined by political analyst Sanusha Naidu. Sanusha, very good morning. Thank you for speaking to us. Let's take a look at the timeline from 2 or 3 months ago when the issue was first broached and Health Minister Dr. Zweli Mkhize said he had nothing to hide.
Good morning, Hugo, and to the viewers. I think it's quite an interesting point to start off with in terms of the timeline and the response by the minister, because now that we've gone 3 or 4 months down the line, we actually see more and more information coming out with the Scorpio investigative unit at Daily Maverick and exposing more and more the dynamics of the actual transaction that was happening in terms of this irregular tender that was awarded in terms of the Digital Vibes contract. And I think to a large extent, this is where we kind of have the media, which provides the kind of checks and balances and, shines the light in dark spaces and asks the awkward questions, which is really important because now the minister has put himself in a seriously disadvantaged position. I think as the previous insert was alluding to, the optics and the PR around this now has really been damaging for the minister because he has to come out and defend this position he took as saying that there was nothing untoward, that he wasn't involved, that the investigations happened. I think the investigations are happening. We look at the SIU forensic audit, and that is really to come up with how the contract in itself had benefited the minister in terms of contravening his role as a public official, contravening particular frameworks and governance frameworks that basically say that public officials, and especially a minister holding the office, the oath that he took, that is an important point to also think about. And then, of course, there's questions around, the court of public opinion. It doesn't bode well in terms of optics. It doesn't bode well in terms of coming back now and having to defend whatever comes out of this. And I think this is where it becomes really messy, not just for the minister, but also for the president.
Sanusha, I suppose there are two interesting issues we'd like to look at. Firstly, the one is the minister says he was not involved in the awarding of the irregular tender, but the minister has seen to benefit from the outcome of that tender.
Yeah, I mean, there's two issues there, Hugo. The one is he says he wasn't involved in the awarding of the tender. Well, there was a Sunday Times report that suggested that his signature was on that contract that was awarded to the company. And that in itself, it seems to be also not necessarily following the processes and procedures, because my understanding is that the minister, if indeed his signature is in there on the contract, ministers don't sign off on contracts. And then the second thing is around the benefits. What kind of benefits accrued to him? And those are two very, very fundamental questions to be asking, because that's what the SIU forensic report will try and investigate in terms of the forensic audit. But also bearing in mind that the evidence that is now, or whatever evidence that the media has obtained in investigating this issue, this will also have to be very, very thoroughly examined to make sure that there are certain levels in which the minister has not interfered or not basically benefited. But again, this is for the investigating authorities to do so. And then you've got the DA, which has opened up criminal charges against the minister. And that is another avenue that he has to defend. So I think at this point in time, the minister needs to basically be very clear in terms of whether or not he claims that he has not benefited in any way from this contract, because he has to be clear about what does he mean that he has not benefited, because benefit needs to be defined in his mind as being completely apolitical, involved, whatever in this contract. So I think this is the big question for him to also think about much more seriously, and think about what he has said, because he cannot go out there now and say, maybe I did kind of indirectly benefit, because he's now just purging himself.
Well, when you speak about purging himself, let's talk about his failure to appear before the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee yesterday and the outroar that has caused.
Yeah, I think everybody was waiting very anxiously to see the minister appear before the Portfolio Committee. His reasoning of the issue being sub judice. I'm not a legal expert, so I have a very limited understanding of the sub judice rule. But just listening to the responses and listening to a few other legal experts on this, it seems to me that the sub judice rule has to be applied in the context of whether or not there are criminal charges that are, there is a charge or a case that is involved in, and that could influence the outcome of that case. But also in this instance, I think the uniqueness of the situation is, what would he have done? What would he have been asked, and he had to respond to, that would have implicated him and influenced the kind of legal ambit of what he's involved in. The only thing I know is that the SIU, and it hasn't even come to the point of the MPA deciding whether they need to prosecute or any other legal route that would be examined for prosecution. And of course, the DA's case is still, very much in its infancy. So I'm not sure what that means, but it doesn't demonstrate that the sub judice rule can be used in the way that it normally is applied, because it seems to me that it is a kind of defense that is very broad, and I saw certain members in that committee being very frustrated and venting their frustration around this. I think what the minister needed to be very clear about is explaining and of course, the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee is also going to take this under advisement as well. But I think there needs to be clarity about what does this mean when you come to an oversight body like Parliament, which is supposed to basically play and exercise this role. And of course, you can just claim that there's a sub judice rule here that will be basically not violating, but be in terms of a negative impact for the minister. At the same time, I think my sense is that you just completely deepen the mistrust of the minister's ability to deal with this issue. People will say, well, you know what, here was a platform for you to come in and maybe make your case around this. And of course, it was, as much as everyone thought it was going to be about only the Digital Vibes contract, I think there were other issues there that needed to be explained. I think the chair of the committee was also talking about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, the rollout, the question of, how far behind we are with the vaccine rollout program, the glitches in the online registration process, people that are still not being vaccinated over the age of 60, certain areas in rural parts of South Africa that still need to deal with this. And of course, we are now flirting with the third wave. All of these things need a decisive, a coherent response. And I think that would have been a win for the minister if just coming out there and talking about what has been his role thus far. And let's be honest, he has been a good minister in that way. He's been visible. He's been seen on the ground. So I think that was a missed opportunity for him.
Well, I suppose now we can obviously see that pressure has reached fever pitch for the minister to step aside, step down, however you want to word it. How do you see him proceeding from here on?
I think he's going to be basically, there were one or two newspapers on Friday suggesting that he wants to do the right thing, that he wants to step aside or maybe to go on a special leave or just kind of, relieve himself of his duties and let this whole issue follow its natural due legal course. But at the same time, there's this speculation that the president is asking him to be patient and hang in there. I think for the minister, the more this starts to percolate and manifest and become endemic, it doesn't bode well for him in terms of his reputation. It is also a reputation risk and a damaging PR optics for the president as well, because this is an issue that hits closer to home. It is within his cabinet. It is somebody that has not been challenging the president. He's not a foe. He's been quite an important individual in terms of this whole pandemic. And I think this is always going to be a shadow over his head in terms of where does this go? Even if it does seem as if there's possibly a limited kind of reprisal in the sense that they can't find the direct causal links between him and the contract awarding and the benefits, etc. It doesn't necessarily bode well for you because it remains as this kind of issue that will constantly track you wherever you go. And the minister has also been caught up in other issues, as ANC Treasurer General. There's been questions about some of the money that was procured for the ANC for party elections. There was the Hitachi question with Chancellor House, which is the investment arm of ANC. And also, I think some of the revelations that came out of the Zondo Commission by the former PRASA CEO, Lucky Montane. So I think these are questions now that are just coming home to roost. So how this plays out for the minister, I think in terms of him going forward, it will be very important to check. But it's also a serious dilemma for the president.
Sanusha Naidu, thank you very much for your time.